Man who jizz in cash register come into money.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Viking Youth Power Hour.
Most highbrow spot on the Playa.
Wow, you
There's
really
a real
smell like gas.
It's a real academic error in these last 3 days, you know. WWKD, what would Kant do?
Yeah, that's true.
Is that right?
Yeah, pissed in a bottle, a guy came up and said that's against the categorical imperative.
Oh, we got the philosophy majors just losing the gut over
There
here.
we go.
Oh, shit, yeah.
All right, cheers to philosophy.
To
To Immanuel Kant.
To Immanuel Kant.
They used to set,
That
they
sad
used to-
motherfucker.
Yeah, they used to set, people would set their watches by Immanuel Kant.
Yeah,
They'd
dude,
always,
because
like,
that guy
walk
would
out
leave his house
Yeah.
at the same time every day, come back at the exact same time every day. The guy was like clockwork.
Yeah.
Kant. I can't get it.
Did you
Say Kant or cunt?
I can't get it.
Hey,
Potato,
keep this
potato.
above the table.
Hey, let's say see you next Tuesday, okay? Let's keep it clean.
Yep. No more
So those
working.
wacky Scientologists, man,
They're wacky.
yeah.
So did anything ever happen to the South Park guys? I mean, when they did that? I mean,
Nothing.
They get,
No,
they didn't get
Isaac
shit,
Hayes
right?
left the show.
Isaac Hayes left the show. That's what happened.
yeah.
And then they got to shit all over him in the next episode.
Yeah.
It's too bad. I always liked Ike Hayes until
It's
I
true.
found out he was crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
But you got to hold that against?
No.
Well, they've got a pretty powerful.
Scientologists are scary, though.
They got a pretty powerful little structure
Their meme is
to rope
dangerous.
you in and get you into their web. It's, as long as you buy into the first little bit, you're hooked.
It's extremely powerful. I mean, it wouldn't be there if it didn't work on some level, And so a lot of the, I wouldn't call it conspiracy theory, but just sort of the interpretations that Hubbard took aspects of Thelema of Crowleyan magic, mixed it with some how to get ahead in business kind of stuff, and came up with a very efficient way to communicate certain kind of reality creation, magical thinking in a post-war, electronic technological context that really worked, and then it connected with a very, very powerful institution.
Well,
Very
that was
powerful
his later, the first incarnation of Scientology was really just,
Dianetics.
the real first incarnation before Dianetics really came and fucked everyone in the ass was kind of a self-help kind of thing, he was just trying to help people, but he wasn't getting anybody buying the books or being devotees. So then he drew on a lot of the things you were really talking about here.
Well, it's arguable. I think there are actually elements in Dianetics is the first book, and that's before it's a religion. And the idea with Dianetics is that you would learn these techniques and then you would do them yourself.
Right.
So it was a way to avoid, don't go to psychologists.
Okay,
You
yeah,
don't need
yeah,
to deal
yeah.
with shrinks.
Right.
Here's the mechanism of how the brain works. You have these engrams. It fucks you up because you identify with them. Here's the process to clear them. And go and do it yourself. So when that came out in the early 50s, lots of people that, if we were in the early 50s, we would know were into Scientology.
Right.
Freaks and free thinkers and sci-fi, fanatics and weird techies.
Well,
and,
hang out with Jack Parsons for
Yeah, it
a
was
bit.
that whole scene down in Southern California
Jack
with
Parsons.
Heinlein and Jack Parsons and that whole kind of sci-fi crew that was sharing information.
Yeah,
After
that-
Jack Parsons left from.
What's that there in the back?
Yeah. We're arguing about Jack Parsons'
Cephas.
involvement in Scientology.
You get excited.
No, we were arguing about Jack Parsons' involvement in Scientology, which, as I understand, was nil, right? That Jack Parsons and Owen Hubbard did the Babylon working.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Right.
but
That's
it's
pre-Scientology.
arguable that's where Hubbard kind of collected his information
Exactly.
on Thelema
So
and, collected
Parsons,
some money.
So Parsons is full-on Thelemite, so extreme that even Crowley goes in a letter to somebody else like, this guy's out of hand. I don't know what he's thinking. So he was taking it very, very seriously, and he had Hubbard function kind of as his amanuensis, as sort of like his secretary, visionary, like writing down the material kind of stuff. And so he played Edward Kelly to Parsons' John Dee.
Right.
And so either he was learning how to craft that kind of magical world and also learning a bunch of techniques, and so whatever, it's like 5, 6 years later, 7 years later that Dianetics comes out, at which point Parsons is already dead. So you can, get him out of the picture. But so there's, and then he realized, look, this self-help thing that everybody does themselves isn't gonna, presumably isn't, making a lot of money, or at least creating a sustaining institution. So let's turn it into a religion. And so he invents Scientology in the late 50s as a kind of religious framework for Dianetics techniques. So there's kind of a difference between Dianetics and Scientology, the larger Scientology.
Do you know when they became an official religion? Because that's really
57, 58, something like that.
It's kind of the tipping point in when they went into an evil cult, right?
I would actually say no. I would actually say that they're the kind of things we associate. I mean, it depends what you mean by an evil cult, but in terms of like harassing critics, that really doesn't get rolling until the late 60s. So in the 60s, they kind of rode through a lot of the consciousness movement, a lot of rock and roll, a lot of weird freak stuff. People who are trying to get out of they get crazy on whatever weird trip they're on, and they're like,
someone says what you're thinking already doesn't work, and we've got some other technological means that you can actually free yourself.
And so it's like Est in that sense, and some of Est is based on Scientology as well.
And by the way, Xenu places a bunch of people around volcanoes as his overpopulation problem.
Oh yeah,
that's a good solution. Right? So why do you think that something like Scientology worked and sustained itself as opposed to like the process or something like that?
That's a really good question. I think because they, for whatever reason, and that I don't really know, whether Hubbard had a kind of intuitive genius in how to create an institution. So he understood how to create an institution, how to create a method that would really work, and the method works enough that people start to get responses. And of course, one of the positions is that in clearing your engrams and clearing the forms of negativity that you have, and
the thetans,
that in so doing, when you're working with a Scientologist who's more advanced than you, and you're talking about all of your personal history, especially all the fucked up parts of your personal history. So they have a complete record of all your fucked up parts of your personal history. What role that plays in whatever keeping people in the group or whatever is, I don't know.
Currency,
but it's certainly the case that they have a lot of information. They have a dossier.
That's their problem. Like when saying you don't need a psychologist, at least you have a doctor-patient privilege. Like you are in a really legally safe place to actually give out your personal secrets. Whereas with Scientology, like you said, they can just go ahead and write all this shit down and then use it back on you.
And that's their first get. If you go, there's a Scientology place down in Austin when I used to live down there. I'd go down there and talk to the e-meter people, because then, like on the weekends, they'd set up their e-meter station and have the kind of front lines, offer e-meters out to people. And I'd sit down there and talk to them. Like all the questions that they would ask, they would initially like go for like, what's wrong with your relationship with your parents? What was the worst thing that ever happened with a relationship with a girlfriend? And, like immediately start collecting these really negative imprints that they could
share, like confessions.
Have you seen the movie? Have you seen the movie? Oh, you should check it out. You can find it on if you do some hunting online. And I actually went to the Celebrity Center when I was researching the Visionary State, this book about California cults, and there's so much California and Scientology. I had to write about them. And so I said, well, shit, I got to do some research. So I went to the Celebrity Center, and I went along with my brother-in-law, who grew up in L.A. and was terrified of the fucking Scientologists. He was like, I said, man, but you got to be there because I'm too wacky. Like, I don't know. You got to be there for me. To be like the ground. And so you show up, and they show you this movie. And it's mostly pretty goofy. It's very bureaucratic. I mean, their model is incredibly bureaucratic, but it starts out with this totally bizarre sci-fi situation where you're in this asteroid field. There's all these like violent asteroids, running around. There's this really weird atonal music, and then it kind of resolves on the Earth, and they start telling you about Scientology and stuff. So they're really working on multiple levels, and that's another reason I think that they're successful. Is that without getting into whatever mind control is that they have some very powerful sort of ways of enchanting people and enchanting culture.
Yeah, it reminds me. Your description reminded me of the Boy Scout Museum in Murray, Kentucky.
Whoa!
For whatever reason,
that sounds terrifying.
Yeah, it is real terrifying.
But if you
got me out of the Boy Scouts, I was like, I fucking
if you ever go to Hollywood, you got to go to the L. Ron Hubbard Museum on Hollywood Boulevard. It's excellent.
Well, he's a race car driver, is that right?
Oh, he's everything. He's a Navy man. He saved the world from the Nazis. And,
he killed Hitler himself, I think. He was in the bunker and got in there.
The coolest thing they have there, I mean, it's kind of creepy and weird, but sort of funny. And then, but they have this one case, this enormous case that's filled with like 40 e-meters, and they're these totally brilliant, bizarre devices, and they're just there's all these different, styles, and over the decades.
But it's all galvanic skin response.
Well, they say it's something else, but
Yeah.
that's what it looks like. To
I
the
know what
rest of
they
us.
say.
That's one of the most fascinating things about them is that it's not very seductive. Like their get is not really all that clever. You know?
I see what you mean. It's not very seductive. It's not juicy. It's not like erotic or like weird or let's go into that like Carlos Castaneda, like it's mysterious.
Or like
It's
the
very-
Raelians, like saying, "Look at your asshole in a mirror," and then and then love your neighbor.
Hey, don't knock it.
Totally.
No.
We'll be doing that here at 8 o'clock.
That broke the man.
Well, you gotta fix your trunk butt.
Okay. Let's wrap it up. That was 4 segments. I mean, you want to talk some more? Or you wanna,
I'm sure.
hang out?
We're totally happy to chat with you till the
Kind
sun
of
goes
random
down.
on. Well, we could, are you bored of the sort of corporate Burning Man thing? That's kind of,
let's talk about it.
That's
Let's
sort
talk
of
about it.
interesting. I went to see Larry Harvey yesterday talk with Brian Doherty, who's the guy who wrote the This Is Burning Man book, and there was one other character who I didn't catch his name, and it was interesting. I mean, they were, they were both sort of on the same side, so it wasn't very interesting as a debate. There wasn't somebody who was like, no, this is sellout and lame, or whatever. There was no one really representing that kind of position, and it was really fascinating to me because I'm of fundamentally two minds about it, which I'm often about a lot of things. Which you can tell from my writing. It's like I don't know. So what about this? Maybe this. Maybe it's this. I don't know. Welcome. Come into the confusion. Join me. And on the one hand, you're like it's both inevitable and already existing. I mean, we're already completely imbricated in corporate culture. There's obviously positive, productive elements about capitalism. Whatever else you say about it is enormously productive, and it seeks innovation, and in order to exploit it to make money. So it's great. It's a great machine. And if you could get that machine driving towards a more sustainable world, that's arguably the best thing we can possibly be doing now. So being all high and mighty and countercultural and like, no, man, it's not about corporations, is kind of lame. And yet, there's something very honest and authentic about people's revulsion towards that degree of capitulation, if you will. Right. And it's so to me, it's just completely fascinating. And the one thing that I kind of miss in the dialogue is it's kind of a twofold thing. On the one hand, you're like, yes, this is happening. Burning Man is already transforming because of money. Right. It's making a lot of money. It's in the black. There are more and more camps that are like big money camps put on by people who have lots of money.
Radio Free Valhalla.
You guys. So you
just look around you.
You have the filet mignon and the
we're all billionaires.
And
We've got air conditioning and queen size beds for everyone.
Right. So
Painted ladies
it's already
giving us
happening.
sponge baths.
Absolutely.
We've actually got a dust removal system. We've got a whole system that actually moves the air through the camp and actually takes the dust right out.
We got a
I mean,
doctor
it's
on
not these
staff.
tents back here. It's in another place that you don't see.
Absolutely.
Our doctors and lawyers sit still on the bus until we need them.
So anyway,
there's
there's something kind of inevitable about that process, and potentially very creative and very interesting.
Sure.
I mean, there's tons of people who want to take this out into the world. It's one of the most, you can do art or performance or something, but even that only goes so far. It tends to get spectacle. So why not also do companies, do new technologies? Great, but what I miss is the acknowledgement that in doing that, something profound is dying.
Absolutely.
And that you need to mourn what was, and that to say, look, it's not quite the same thing anymore. It's been going on too long. It has too much momentum. There's too much money flowing through it. It's too successful. Something else is going to happen. Let's take this energy and do something else. Let's experiment with it. Great, fine. But there's a weird way in which the kind of official line is not acknowledging what people are mourning, which is just the possibility of existing, even in just sort of a collective consensus agreement of existing kind of outside of that logic. And to have the pavilion, to have companies inside the pavilion underneath the man, it fundamentally transforms the sort of subliminal message of the thing, and you got to acknowledge that. And to say like, oh no, well, we're just about changing the world, it's about community, yeah, whatever. But something is lost, something is changed.
So would you say that propels your project to go around the country and actually do these tours?
Yeah, that actually is part of the kind of the Burning Roadshow idea, is that in some sense the Playa experience itself is not, it's not played out. It's, you know, it's transforming, but it wants to, you know, seed. You know, it wants to spread out, and a lot of people are feeling this. You know, and you see that in arts collectives, you see it in fashion, you see it in music. You know, there's a lot of ways it's going on, particularly in the cultural zone, but also the you know, kind of environmental, you know, ethic of the thing. And it's revitalized a lot of other subcultures, like more, you know, kind of old school pagan rainbow people. It's like, well, there's this new kind of more gritty, more technological, more you know, propane fueled kind of thing. Well, let's try to do it in a you know, in a new way. So in that sense, it makes, you know, it makes a lot of sense.
Would you say then that the regionals, the regional events are really where it's at? If you want the old Burning Man experience, the old experience pre-96, like it's going to the regionals, what it's really about, you know?
I mean, I actually haven't been to any regionals, so I can't really speak to that. Although I would say pre-97.
Well then, okay, so then what?
96 was the last.
Yeah.
Like,
So okay,
middle-
so pre-
middle old
They still
school.
had guns in '96.
Yeah, they still had guns.
Well,
in 96.
what I mean by that is that this is the big show, right? You know, this is the big show here. But it's okay if it becomes corporatized because it's spread out enough already.
That's the idea, and I think it makes sense. That's what I mean. Is I think that is inevitable, but that there is something, you know, troubling about that inevitability.
You want
Absolutely.
to have a sacred space. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
Something that I was thinking about is like, I think like I always see this as like the family reunion that we can come to and kind of celebrate, and what Burning Man has kind of grown into from being what it was, you know, when it started and grew up over those, you know, 21 years or whatever, is that it's actually kind of become a kind of like a cultural seed, or like a way that, you know, where we had like the civil rights movement and the gay rights movement in the 60s. It's like we're kind of having a coalescing force of the freak movement.
The freak movement.
You know.
Absolutely, and
it's-
that's great.
It's giving legs to that.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
and in that sense, it's enormously, you know, productive. You know, it's like there's a lot going on here, and even the fact that, like, you know, well, one of the most important corporations on the planet now, you know, with enormous mind share over the consciousness of millions, is, you know, run by two guys who've spent time at Burning Man. Now, I don't know what their Burning Man experience is, but something's come through it. There may be bad elements of the way that they're burners, but it's overall not going to be a step in the wrong direction.
Is it true though that there's like a Google kiosk? Where
Can
you
I go hang out with Sergey Brin? Is
I haven't
Sergey
seen.
here?
I've heard about that. I don't know it. I haven't seen. I haven't been out to the pavilion. I mean, all I know about them is that one year they did like a pizza camp, and they had a map of the Playa, and they had like, it was a dartboard, and they just threw darts, and wherever the dart landed, they'd go and deliver a pizza, which is, you know,
That's cool.
You know, kind of, you know, sort of like
It's on
B
message.
minus Burning Man kind of thing. You know, it's perfectly acceptable.
Shit,
It's not gonna.
if that's B minus, then we're a C plus.
Oh, come on, gentlemen.
With summer school.
You know, one of the things that
There's
I find,
whiskey here. I mean, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we got a veggie
Oh wait!
bus.
Oh shit!
Yeah, right.
one of the things that I found interesting in watching sort of like the evolution of Burning Man is it moving from sort of this outside space in which people would go to get away from whatever the cultural norms of the time were, into seeing it turn into like a feedback of the zeitgeist of the times. You know, we look now like the greening the man thing. I think is the most obvious you know, manifestation of that, right? All of a sudden, these things that become very politically important in the outside world have all of a sudden like fed into this community and become important there too. And it's interesting to watch that sort of evolutionary process. Be it good, be it bad, it's somewhere in
Exactly.
between would be my thinking. But it's a very interesting process to watch.
Yeah.
Well, I think
You
it's
know?
it seems to be like a good thing that like that the powers that be have seen that like they have what they have here is a marketer's dream. If you could actually, I mean, these are culture makers.
That's what it said in that article.
I mean, these are culture makers here. So if you could actually market to the people here, that would be huge. And I don't think that's lost on Larry and Maid Marian and all the other people. They know. So I think what they saw is, and maybe they went to Al Gore's actual presentation, you know, and said, you know, shit, you know, okay, we could sell these people to everyone, or we could try to do something good with all the culture makers that are actually here.
Or another way of thinking is that you encourage the culture makers to produce their own pods, their own whatever they are, organizations, companies, corporate, and that's where you're really doing is that as Burning Man grows, it's not only a marketer's dream in terms of a group to market to, but it's a production of markets. And so when you produce markets, then you can produce industries that support those markets. And if those are large enough, but they're cutting edge, they're freak, they're eco in an interesting way, whatever, then once you get markets going, then they have much greater likelihood to spread.
Right.
So it becomes not just a petri dish of ideas, but like you say, it's a feedback loop. And I think that that's a great process. It's an inevitable process, and it's part of the just the sense of desperation in a way. It's like, come on, we got to do something, and there's so much productivity here.
And you're on the board of directors of BRAF now, or is that?
I'm on advisory.
Okay, what does that mean, and how does that play into what you see?
Well, I think BRAF is like a number of organizations is an interesting side of it.
For people who don't know, Burning Man, Black Rock Arts Foundation, yes?
Black Rock Arts Foundation.
For those who don't know.
And so they've done projects mostly in San Francisco, and it's really about trying to bring the Playa art out, into the world in different ways. And in San Francisco, they've done it in a very brilliant fashion, which is like public art in cities is an enormously complicated, bureaucratic, political topic. Because if you're going to put a permanent structure, you have to get all this approval from all these different groups and all these different, agendas, and et cetera, et cetera. But they realize that because they have a connection with the mayor and the mayor's behind it, that they can put up temporary work, and they don't need to do all that. So the mayor's office can go, yeah, that's cool, let's do that. And so you can get stuff up much more quickly. It just has to be temporary, which itself is such a great kind of Burning Man element. So that's the core element of what they've been doing, or what we've been doing. But also, it's really trying to get it into community as well, so that people begin to participate in that sense of being creative, which really is one of the greatest things about this place, is just that you walk away, if you come the first time and maybe you didn't do very much or you did something dorky, that you come away with like genuine inspiration of what the heck you're going to do. And it teaches a kind of can-do, like the magazine, Make, really popular magazine, it's like this
great
magazines, brilliant, done, and part of what it's feeding off of is this desire to actually, well, it's a couple of things. One is to actually get control back over the things that you're actually producing that make the context of your life or your hobby or your entertainment. But it's also about, there's so much productivity in technology and in culture and
somebody
in media.
figured something out and is saying, here's how I did it, instead of having people keeping to have to reinvent the wheel.
And so it spreads through that kind of culture in a way. Like I think Burning Man has its own very strong maker element, where like you have a theme camp or you have a big camp and you got to deal with all this practical crap, and you figure out solutions, and you find out from other camps, we can do this with the rebar, we can do this with the gray water, we can all this kind of like can do stuff. So you come out here and you just learn more. You get away from just being a service industry, information floating robot, and you get your hands dirty and you learn how to do stuff, unless you're one of those people who always kind of did that. So it spreads this culture of actual making, of production, of producing reality, of producing experience, producing spectacle and wonder, and also just the nitty-gritty of a camp. So why not take that energy and try to spread it out and give it a little bit more muscle with good technologies and good eco stuff. So it's very exciting on that level.
Yeah, I think we've seen that happen to ourselves over the past few years. We've spent a lot. None of us are guys who are particularly handy or.
I'm pretty handy.
Well, you know shit. Whatever.
I'm kind of elbowy myself.
Buckman's kind of handy. I'm kind of handy. Buckman's kind of handy.
No, I don't think any of us are exceptionally. None of us are carpenters. But
no. Okay.
But we've sort of like picked a project and figured out a way to do it. Which is really interesting. To kind of like say, okay, I guess I can do this.
And we'd never do that if we were here. If we hadn't been here.
I think that's kind of what Burning Man taught us, is that what. Maybe you don't know everything about it, but I bet you can figure it out, and I bet you can find some people that'll help you learn what you don't know.
Right.
So just bite off more than you can chew and see what happens.
Right. And imagine if that kind of attitude, that kind of culture is spread as on a larger level, where you're like, well, shit, let's create a mutual aid society so that we can not be part of like the insurance industry, but still somehow survive our
Let's buy a school bus, because we heard that it's cheap to buy a school bus and it's really easy to convert into run on veggie oil.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we had no idea when getting into it, and of course that's what we did, and we accomplished it easily.
My first ghetto experiment with NLP is I kept saying, after I was trying to do something positive in my life, I'd say, check, proceed. Like a robot, like I was a machine, like some sort of fucking German machine. you know, and as you can see on the side of our bus, there's a gigantic flaming skyline of Chicago that says "Proceed," and it's across the country. And it's the middle of the desert. We drove over fucking mountains to get here 3 times.
With a 2-stroke engine in that thing.
Ow.
So there you go.
Yeah, I know. I don't think I haven't been dialed in.
Yeah.
I haven't been taken to the right bars.
Come on out.
Yes.
We'll take you
It's
to.
real easy. We'll take you to the bar that's a block from our house.
Yeah. Would you guys go to the hideout? So Nat, like my friend Nat's in camping with me. You know that guy? He's like one of the bartenders there. This guy Nat Ward. Big guy.
Yeah,
He said he knew you guys.
I've gone to the hideout.
Yeah, we know Matt Ward. I know Matt Ward.
Yeah.
It's a small fucking world.
When did you get so drunk? What happened? You were fine just a minute ago.
I am fine.
Holy
He's
shit,
still
what
on
just
it.
happened?
Alex
I don't know.
is rolling.
Talking like a drunk ass. Now back to more Viking Youth Power Hour.
I think we just really screwed up Coney there for a second. Am I saying this? I'm not saying this.
We'll be back.
Am I too drunk?
Yeah.
No,
this
shut
guy
the hell
was
up.
a bad-
No,
hollering
you're
about
just
people
drunk. It's just.
It was that show you went off on Jason.
Does punch drunk
That's a
mean you want to
different
punch
fucking
somebody,
story. You
or
were
just that
wasting
you're
my
just
time.
you've been drinking the punch?
Punch drunk is actually. Are you serious?
I'm serious. I don't know.
A punch drunk is when you've been punched in the head so many times it has your consciousness is
No.
somewhat like alcohol, like.
Hey, I gotta
drunkenness.
try it. I mean,
I
you know,
couldn't
I
do
do,
that
I
to you.
do, I do these alphabeticals. Might as well
I
try
can't
like
do that
getting
to
punch
you. You're
drunk.
such a nice guy. Say something.
Wait! I gotta tell you. This is one riff.
Say something bad about my mother.
No, I'm gonna say about it. I'm talking about
Sloppy Sharon.
tobacco, right? Okay, tobacco. Think about tobacco. Okay, think about tobacco and Native Americans, right? Tobacco and Indians. What do you get? Sacred, holy, you know, like just, you know, peace pipe, you know,
Sure.
shaman shit, right?
Neurotic addiction.
You know,
yeah.
so no, but that's the thing. We don't think about neurotic. We just think, you know, peace pipe, right?
Smoke when we got
So there was, I came across this fucking amazing article on the web that was for some epidemiological conference or something about like social diseases, and you know, things spread through society and culture, and not through you know, viral. And he was talking about you know, tobacco addiction. So it was like, well, you know, let's see, if tobacco is addictive, well, what about the Native Americans? Let's do a little research here. So he went back and he read journal accounts from Westerners, you know, Europeans who were in, you know, sort of Iroquois area, the East Coast in the early 1700s. So these are like mostly Jesuit priests, some fur trappers, you know.
Right.
So before
French
the
fur
you know, before the Pilgrims, you know,
You're
so
talking about
early
good
on.
times.
This is
Good
tights,
times.
tights
Early.
and wigs kind of
So
shit.
so he quoted like over 20 different journals from different people, and the basic conclusion, actually the clear and unambiguous conclusion from these journals, is that every male over the age of about 18 smoked all the fucking time. They had pipes with them. They'd scrape the inside of the wooden pipes when they ran out of tobacco. They'd smoke, wake up in the middle of the night and smoke. They were smoking all the time.
Shit.
So it's like that whole like, ooh, we're sacred. You know, yeah, they did sacred shit. I mean, you know.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
noble savage shit, right?
No,
The
but they
same
were
sort
just-
of, same
Well, I mean,
sort of
tobacco. I mean,
idea.
tobacco's powerful. I mean, tobacco is the most important New World plant. You're going to tell you know, you hear about ayahuasca. Ayahuasca.
Wait, what's this? What's this?
Ayahuasca.
You mean grandmother?
You know, grandmother. Right, exactly. I'm sitting with the grandmother. Great, ayahuasca. But like, what do you have at every ayahuasca ceremony? Tobacco. Tobacco is everywhere. Tobacco that's the mother in Native American tradition. But we don't know how to deal with that. You know, so we're like we can't deal with it. So we get like addictive and compulsive about it.
Why is it that we transform everything into a compulsion? You know.
Because it's never enough.
Christianity, being fucked up, technology. You know, I mean, you
maybe
know,
the
Europe
same
was like, you know, Europe transformed the world more than any other culture, and so you know, what was that about? It was incredibly creative and productive, but also clearly driven by need and obsession and compulsion, and you know, not being very happy, and you know, whatever, all the reasons that people want to like.
So what is that thing that we're trying to drive down that turns everything into a compulsion? I mean,
Hey, that's a good question, man. I mean, it's just like.
Number 2 for you, Bucky.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's it. What is it about? What is it about compulsion? I think it's also partly about like once you get capitalism going, capitalism has its own logic. There's a kind of weird esoteric way of looking at corporations that I love, and it's I have to hand it over to my friend Paco Nathan Zander, who ran Fringeware.
Yeah.
So he wrote this insanely brilliant article. It's just one of the best things I've ever read. And what he was talking about was the occult concept of the egregore, or the servitor. So the idea is that, in occult logic, you can use language and ritual to create a kind of, or sort of instantiate a kind of entity that has its own life.
Sure.
Right. Well, whatever. I'm just saying.
No. I mean, that's something we're real familiar with.
So the idea is that what you have with corporations is that those are productions of language and consensus reality creation.
3D branding,
and,
too.
and even on a literal level of what are corporations? They're law. They exist through a whole legal linguistic mechanism that then develops a certain kind of power in society, and so they exist. Now, what he argued in this brilliant article was he showed how over the last, since the the 1700s, the powers of corporations have been growing steadily. Like, in the late 19th century, they're recognized as individuals, which gives them a certain kind of power, and then the extension of intellectual copyright increases, blah blah blah. And what he showed is that there are these series of pivotal legal decisions, because it's all about law, it's all about language and consensus reality creation through language, that these pivotal decisions occur just longer than the length of a normal human lifespan. So it's like you're living in your kind of reality where corporations are about that big. And then when you're gone, they're like, okay, it's time. We're ramping this puppy up, and you do it again. And then like 90 years later, 100 years later, you do it again. So basically a bunch of weird British in this argument, weird British occultists in the 1700s go, or 1600s go, like, okay, we're going to invent corporations. We're going to use language and magic and imagination and create these like constructs which have matter and money flowing through them, and it's going to be really cool. And then they've just grown into these enormous astral monsters that were just like little ants scuttling around in their shadow.
So there's a pretty dominant meme, and I think we were talking about it earlier with Burning Man, with a lot of like the greening movement and stuff like that, is that we can infect this kind of corporate structure and kind of take it back for the freaks or for the good people, right?
Right.
But what is that possible? And like, what are we going to lose when we combine with that? Because it does seem like an inherently kind of corrupt system.
It's true. I think the way to look at it is that the idea that is possible is extremely important. That to really reject the whole thing is almost inevitably to be a nihilist. To be like, it's fucked, it's all going to go to shit, humans are fucked anyway, let's just have it destroyed and then the planet can go on its own. Like, it's really, really hard to, in my opinion, to develop a really positive, future-oriented idea that does not involve sort of infecting or whatever you're talking about, that process you're describing. But at the same time, that always will degrade. That always will corrupt. That always will cheapen. It will always have this lame element to it. So it's like a dynamic where you have this element that's a productive novelty generation that's fringe or freak, and it produces ideas, concepts, technologies that then go and get instantiated inside of corporate or consumer logic. Consumer is probably a better word. Consumer logic. And then you just keep doing that, and that's it. Like, that's the leaky boat. We're in the leaky boat. The boat's leaking. We're trying to get over to the other shore. We can't see where the island is. Shit, the boat's sinking. Okay, throw the water out. Keep rowing. Come on. That's sort of what we do.
Yeah.
Product of desperation, in a way.
What are the Fringewear kids doing these days?
Well, I don't know if I can talk about this. Paco's doing some kind of very interesting sort of avatar identity online thing.
Really?
And the idea is to, like, how do you create a way to have an intelligent avatar? So not just a visual representation in the virtual world or some kind of game thing, but actually a sort of mini AI that kind of knows who you are and knows what your choices actually are, and is able to engage and kind of trade information or gain connections with other sorts of entities in the online world when you're not actually engaging with it. So how do you create an intelligent way of being present online without actually you having to sit there and like make all the decisions?
Are you talking about all human interaction being mediated by
online
by commercial?
No. It's more like virtual identity.
Okay.
The whole thing about how do we know who people are online, and how do we do that in a way that doesn't just rape us for
Can they be a
information.
person? Can they be a software? Yeah.
So he's doing stuff in that zone.
Okay, cool.
I would like to switch gears here.
Yeah.
Let's get Charlie Rose here. Oh my God.
Let's do it.
Put on your serious hat here.
Put your hand on the table like
All right,
this.
I'm feeling it.
Easy.
Now,
I have. When was the first? Why did you choose writing as like the primary expression of your ideas?
I don't think I really chose it. I just, partly because in high school, whatever, you used to write papers, so I was like, I would write stuff and then just get into it. And in college, the same thing. It'd be like, I gotta write a paper, so like, why not make it interesting and weird?
What'd you go to college for?
What's that? I got a BA in English.
Okay.
So I studied literary theory and
No, what'd you go to
English
college
literature.
for?
Oh, to party.
yeah.
But actually, I didn't go to party. I went to a weird. It was weird, So I was like, I didn't take the party option, which to my eternal regret.
Wow.
I'm
I
still
wish
trying
I
to
could
figure
say
out what I would
that.
do.
I know. Whatever.
totally could've gone
I
to
was
Burning
suckered
Man.
by the fancy blinking lights of the Ivy League. Ooh, the Ivy
Okay,
League.
so you're doing a course with Maybe Logic, right? You're doing
We're doing a course on Philip K. Dick, and it
Nice.
should be tons of fun.
Yeah.
The
and-
Viking Youth is all over that.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to, we'll do some podcasting. Maybe if they get the tech together, we'll do some like live chat thing. I'm not sure if that's going to get. They're working on it right now. But in any case, there's just so much interesting stuff about Dick right now. It's so bizarre. The transformation into like this kind of pop figure is really peculiar.
The crazy philosophy of Philip K. Dick. Right?
Have you-
Yeah. The crazy wisdom of Philip K. Dick. I mean, the way I look at it is like like in a lot of the writing now you see about Philip K. Dick, it's like he's kind of become this sort of not mainstream, but he's sort of like the freak du jour.
he's the Hollywood fancy.
Well, have you heard they're making The Owl in the Daylight? Into a
Yeah, they're
movie?
making the Owl.
Really?
There's another biopic too. There's a couple of other
Really?
movies.
Well, yeah, biopic with a guy with a chip in his head. The aliens are talking to him through music that's going to explode his brain. I mean,
Yeah,
like, what kind of...
it's pretty weird stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
Valis.
Oh, that's
yeah,
great.
they're
That's
doing the
Valis.
Valis story, and
They're gonna do the Valis film because it seems impossible
So-
to do.
How can you
How
do Valis? Come
I
on.
don't
You can't
know.
do the Valis film. You know?
I don't know.
I-
That's why I think you should do the Valis film. That's the thing. It's all about like that
Just
little
do it
movie.
as
Yeah,
the film, right?
just-
Oh, yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's too arty.
But I mean, how are you going to do Divine Invasion? You can't have that. You know.
I mean, that's the thing is that so much of what goes on in Philip K. Dick is precisely what you can't do in movies.
Yeah.
It's a tone.
They've proven
it's,
that pretty well.
yeah.
It's certain kinds of concepts. I mean, there's some concepts that translate really easily and some that don't. And my whole thing is that like if you look at the history of science fiction or post-war science fiction, there's very little of it that actually is explicitly mystical.
Theater Sturgeon.
Theater Sturgeon. There's a couple. There's some Silverberg novels. There's Cordwainer Smith, arguably L. Ron Hubbard. And so there's some people who have really good stuff, but in general, it's not really part of the milieu. But here you have this guy whose like experiences are essentially, mystical, prophetic. Working in this medium, so it's a very unusual situation. And I think that what's happening now is that people are trying. You have to deal with Dick. We're looking at the future. There's no way around it. You have to go into his labyrinth of mirrors, his chamber of horrors, and it's not a pleasant world most of the time. I mean, it's a gas to read, but I don't want to live there.
That's
But
the
I
thing
do.
is he has that's the thing is he has like these real whacked out concepts and very this very futuristic mystical
It's not though, really.
But no,
I mean,
but the
it's-
thing is it's especially in the Valis trilogy, it's,
it's
told
technological,
from
though.
the perspective of it's a very
Of a psychotic.
Dostoevskian
Right.
crisis,
Right.
personal
Yeah, it's a
fucking crisis.
exactly.
It's like something you can relate to.
And
You're a
it's a
fuck up. You had some weird shit
Yeah.
that makes you who you are.
No,
and
the
it's a
can
very
relate to
ancient
it.
struggle.
the
too. I mean, I
Dostoevsky
think it's
analogy
very-
is very apt. I think. Like if you read the Brothers Karamazov, you see this same sort of like crisis point that is reached.
Well, the
by
split
the primary
personality that's
character,
turned
right?
into art.
Yeah. And I think what's happening now is they're trying. There's a kind of recuperation of him without really acknowledging the profoundly mystical, if you will, psychedelic. Although he's not really psychedelic, but just the deep reality creation level of what's going on there. And so they kind of wash over the sort of Bardo side of it and look at it as like, oh, he's this weird character and da da da. So I really want to kind of bring forward that. Like what do you do if you read those things as like Gnostic tractates for us? I mean, like let's just take the fiction that he's this visionary. Great, let's just accept it rather than being like, oh well, he's just this character. Da, da, da. Why not? Let's see what happens.
I mean, like even beyond kind of the kind of more conceptual stuff that he was dealing with, he really captured kind of the drug culture in a way that was, I think, in a lot of ways like more honest than like what the beatniks were doing, and you know where it really did capture this kind of malaise and this kind of confusion that is pretty rampant in people that like to explore state changes.
Exactly.
You know?
No, I think that's really, really brilliant. It's not, there's no, rosy glasses. And, and even the fact that his sort of preferred substance is amphetamine is fascinating. It's like, yes, they're very trippy, they're very psychedelic, but actually it's really driven more by a kind of, amphetamine excess, which is true of the beats in some sense as well. Sure. But one of the things that's great about Dick is that he describes a world where the things that we look at now, particularly from like the New Agers look at as being some kind of salvational thing, like telepathy. Like, wow, in the future, there's the new telepathic consciousness that's coming. We're all starting to tune into a realm of synchronicity, and we're being able to like, whatever, some vision like that. But let me finish. And that what he sees is a world where that stuff comes true, but it's still our world. Yes. It's still a world of corporations, of like, you're not really sure what's going on and who's trying to sell you something. And so to me that is like profoundly, I mean, like some of my most profound, visionary experiences is that like, yes, there's a galactic civilization filled with like entities, cultures, civilizations, technologies, and we're just on the lip of entering in this like, amazing matrix of cosmic awareness, except that once you actually get there, it's kind of like Burning Man. It's sort of like, it's sort of a messy carnival of all these people trying to get you to do something. You're not really sure who they are. It's kind of sketchy.
Are still there,
it's not that different. It's like, you die and you wake up in the Bardo and you're like, oh my gosh, the Bardo, and you're like, fuck, it's not that different. So people are kind of assholes, and you gotta like, you're worried and you're anxious and shit. What am I gonna do?
It's the same shit, just shinier.
Yeah, shinier shit.
Oh, that's good.
All right. Well, that's brilliant. Let's
All
do
right.
a shot and wrap it up.
Yeah,
Okay,
let's do a
sir.
shot. Always a pleasure, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
Cheers. All right. Thank you, sirs. Shinier shit. So where's the nearest head, man?